Will Tennessee's easy schedule, supposedly easy schedule, outweigh their talent issues that they seem to have? There's obviously a lot of freak out over the players they have lost, whether it be to transfer, the NFL draft, injury, or whatever. And it doesn't seem like they've upgraded the same way other schools have, which we will get to in our second block. But according to CBS Sports, Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports wrote an article, and it's overreactions from spring practice for every SEC team. He wrote that easy schedule will lead to playoff appearance. And here is the direct quote. Talk about all you want about Nico Iamaleava leaving for USL. Let me start that over. Talk all you want about Nico Iamaleava leaving for UCLA, but I'm not sure that matters much for the Vols. I hate the term system quarterbacks, but Josh Heupel's offense provides that structure for a signal caller. UCLA transfer Joey Aguilar will be just fine, and he'll have some wondering if the Vols won the de facto trade with the Bruins. The MVP at Tennessee is the schedule maker. The Vols get Georgia and Oklahoma at home, and arguably their most challenging games are on the road at Alabama and Florida. That's at least a 9-win season, and the win total at FanDuel is currently 8.5. Now, a 9-win season doesn't get you to the college football playoff. We learned that last year. 10-2 does, and Tennessee's schedule, if it's as easy as Marcelo says it is, it's not going to get them to a college football playoff at 9-3 this year either. They will have other 9-3 teams with better schedules. But let's ask this question. Because Tennessee did benefit from last year, from the fact that only 2 teams that Tennessee played all year, Georgia and Alabama, finished the season ranked in the top 25 during the regular season. They did play Ohio State in the college football playoff, but only 2. This year, they play 3 teams that finished last season in the top 25 because they play Syracuse to open the season, and then they also still play Georgia and Alabama. So with that type of schedule, and most people don't think Syracuse is not on their level, but with that type of schedule, will the easy schedule be enough to outweigh supposed talent issues? And the poll question is up, and go on and vote for it. My poll question I'm asking is, will Tennessee football's easy schedule outweigh its issues in terms of talent? Yes, no. Vols don't have an easy schedule. Vols don't have a talent issue. Those are your questions. I can't really say talent issue yet. I'll talk about that soon. What I can say about Tennessee's schedule is that I think we're overlooking how difficult it actually could be. Not how difficult we know it will be, but how difficult it could be. So I'm going to say no. The easy schedule won't outweigh their issues in terms of talent because the schedule's not as easy as it looks, particularly for Tennessee and particularly when you take it into account matchup issues. So let's start with Syracuse. Syracuse finished last year in the top 25. They're building a program under Fran Brown. Now they took a step back because they lost some key players, but I still think they'll be fine. They've got a lot of talent. Fran Brown's got the program rolling, and Tennessee has a lot of attrition it has to deal with that opening weekend. So Syracuse, just for that reason, could be tougher than we think. 2 weeks later, you talk about dividing the schedule. Georgia's very early in the season, and it's at home. And I think Tennessee would rather have Georgia on the road. I'll get to why in a second, but one of the reasons Georgia being at home doesn't matter is because they play Georgia so early when they're breaking in a new quarterback. They're still going to be banged up at a couple of key positions, cornerback, and they're just not on Georgia's level talent-wise. And when you take all of that into account, one, playing Georgia early hurts because of their lack of development. They will still be young. They will still be developing. But playing Georgia at home hurts because that's a wasted loss that you have to waste a home game on a game that's probably a circled loss anyway. So going down the list, they just brought up the 2 most challenging foes arguably are on the road, Alabama and Florida. Well, Georgia's the most challenging foe, but playing Alabama and Florida on the road is another problem. They'd much rather play Alabama and Florida at home and Georgia on the road. Tennessee hasn't beaten Alabama or Florida on the road since 2003. Alabama is going to be much better this year under Kalen DeBoer, I think. And that's going to be an issue for Tennessee, especially going to Tuscaloosa. And Florida had a very strong finish to the season last year. They did upset Ole Miss. They were left for dead. They were dead in the water. Billy Napier was getting fired. And then out of the blue, They won their final 4 games, including 2 top 25 wins over LSU and Ole Miss, both of whom were in the college football playoff race entering November. I mean, we're still not talking about that. They entered November in the college football playoff race, and Florida beat both of them back-to-back weeks, and they barely finished outside of the top 25. They finished 8-5, and now they returned DJ Lagway. There's a lot of hype behind them. So playing Florida on the road is definitely difficult. So when you take that into account, after playing only 2 teams in the regular season to finish in the top 25 last year, it's looking like they're going to play 4 teams in the regular season who could finish in the top 25 this year. So my take on this is the Vols don't really have an easy schedule. I think the schedule is much more difficult than it is. And with that in mind, I don't think it's going to outweigh the issues of playing at home. I also think Kentucky being on the road is a little bit more difficult, even though they were 4-8, 5-7 last year. And Mississippi State's going to take a step forward under Jeff Lebby. They're on the road. Tennessee's vulnerable to drop a game it shouldn't on the road somewhere. Oklahoma at home is one they should win. Brent Venables, I think, could be on the hot seat after this year. They have a new offensive coordinator. They're desperately trying anything, but they could be better at quarterback. So I think the schedule is actually harder, and I think Syracuse is a much harder non-conference game than NC State was last year. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Vote on the poll question. We'll give you the results after a quick message from Banks & Jones.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. The poll question: will Tennessee football's easy schedule outweigh its issues in terms of talent? The leading vote getter by a plurality is the Vols don't have an easy schedule. That's at 38%. Tied at 24% are no, it won't. And the Vols don't have a talent issue. And then at 14%, yes, it will outweigh its issues in terms of talent. I'm leaning with the plurality that the Vols don't have an easy schedule. Again, I think that this is based on last year. I think that's what Brandon Marcello is doing. And I think he's just missing the fact that this is these are very different teams Tennessee's playing. Georgia is still Georgia. Alabama and Florida are both going to be better, as will Mississippi State and maybe even Arkansas and Oklahoma. Okay, so in terms of the tough teams, their toughest opponents are actually going to be significantly better. And taking that into account, look, it's really hard to say that Tennessee is going to have a much easier schedule. So I'm going to say no. The schedule will not outweigh their talent issues, whatever those may be, just because of the schedule. Truth be told, it did outweigh it last year. It might have outweighed it last year. That might have been how they got to the college football playoff. I mean, Tennessee's best win was at home against Alabama, and Alabama ended up 9-3 and lost 24-3 to Oklahoma late in the year. So, I mean, it wasn't like Alabama ended up being that special of a team. They lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. So, and of course, Michigan at the end of the year. Jalen Milroe was not a good quarterback, a terrible fit for Kalen DeBoer's system. I get they beat LSU, Missouri, and they did shock Georgia at home, but there were 1,000 issues with Alabama. So I'm not so sure. And Tennessee kind of laid the blueprint for shutting down Alabama's offense. And with that in mind, I think Tennessee, truth be told, wasn't that special in beating Alabama after you saw how it went the rest of the way. So this year, I think things are a lot more difficult. Alabama and Florida on the road, and then Georgia at home is still almost a circle loss, particularly since it's in September. Even if you think Tennessee by year 5 should be on Georgia's level, and I said last Friday, Josh Heupel doesn't get a mulligan for that, the attrition that Tennessee's dealing with doesn't jive well with them having to play Georgia so early in the season. That's a real big problem for them. And it's funny. Tennessee fans always complain about playing Georgia early in the season, and Tennessee fans always complain about playing Florida late in the season. Recently, they've been playing. I can't even talk right now. Tennessee fans have been complaining for years about playing Florida early in the season, which they've been doing for the past 30 years since this rivalry began. Recently, they've been playing Georgia late in the season. It has since reversed. They played Georgia early in the season this year. third week of the year, and then they play Florida November the 22nd, their second to last game of the year. That Florida game could be huge because they could be on the bubble for the playoff that day going into Gainesville. That could be a game where both teams are fighting for a playoff spot, and since it's in November, it could be as big as the 2001 Tennessee-Florida matchup, which obviously is one of the most legendary in school history. So a lot to think about with Tennessee and the schedule. I just think the generic takeaway from me is that their schedule is not as easy as it looks on paper, even though it was desirable in 2024. Again, things have just changed since then. So we're going to have to talk about that going forward. And I just don't think that the question is, well, is there a talent issue to where they needed an easy schedule? We don't know that yet. We can't say for sure.